Mini episode 96 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by the Sports Train, the finest pure sports talk show on both terrestrial and internet radio. Follow them on the web at thesportstrain.net.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
All right, everybody, we've got a great mini episode here today. Rick Morris and Kyle Ross. It is part 6 of the 9-part Kyle Ross History of WrestleMania anthology.
You know, I had no idea that it was close to go time here.
Yeah.
And considering, like, the political debate we just had, like,
Yeah.
I'm still sort of, like, gathering myself. I don't know how you transition, you know, some of that, you know, the 1988 presidential race to the Allied Powers versus the Blue Brothers. Are we able to do this?
Yeah. I mean,
I know nothing is off limits at FDH. Well,
right.
Apparently, after listening to your latest diatribe, a few things are off limits in the FDH Lounge.
Yes,
but
gay marriage among them, at least from my point of view. But no, here's the thing. Now we're doing this in a mini episode format now, but you got to remember. The 152 episodes that we did over 4.5 years when we were distributed by the Sports Talk Network, we would go in one segment from, you know, hardcore political crap to pro wrestling to the NFL to whatever. Me and you talking about stuff like this right before we flipped the mics on. No big deal, man.
I'm actually saying I literally had no idea we were starting. I was just standing here with the mic, and I'm like, we are going. You're like, wow, this WrestleMania 11 only had 7 matches. I'm like, it did, Ricky. That's correct. Okay, welcome to the mini episode. Okay, here we go. Here, WrestleMania 11 through 13.
Yeah, well, that's there's a lot to criticize here on these shows.
This is the low point in company history about Center. This is, we've waxed, not I mean to cut you off, but we've waxed nostalgic largely for, that's why I think some of these earlier ones we went so long. There's so much, even though they're, most of them, I have ranked as in the poorer WrestleManias, but there's a lot of waxing nostalgia. That ended with a horrible thud with WrestleMania 9, and then WrestleMania 10 wasn't so much nostalgia. I just really appreciate the booking, I think, a little more so than you. This is just like... This is the only one that I think is almost like kind of a chore. Like, yeah, we got to do these.
Right.
I mean, it's going to end on a positive tease going to the next ones, which is good, but until we get there, it's going to be just being critical, which I don't like doing.
And I think everything works out the way that it's supposed to on these things, because for me and you, off air a minute ago here, engaging in some caustic political banter and humor, that's a good tone setter for this, because we are going to need our sense of humor. We are going to need the same biting cynicism that we bring to talking about Mitt Romney and Barack Obama to discussing WrestleManias 11 through 13.
Yeah.
It is a perfect state of mind kind of a thing here. WrestleMania 11, we had started to talk about this with 10, that 10 put Bret Hart on top, but by the end of the year he had tumbled back down the ladder to the 1A, soon to be maybe 1B position here in the promotion. Diesel was on top after the split with Shawn Michaels, and that set the tone for there was to be. This was essentially a double main event show, because you did have Diesel against Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship.
Once they split up, that was the obvious hot program.
Right.
Michaels, it was considered such a formality that he was going to win the Royal Rumble.
Right.
That they put him in at number 1 and let him run the table. And that is the worst Rumble ever. Although I loved the ending with the fake.
It was 30 seconds, wasn't it? I mean, it was
No,
boom,
it was a
boom,
minute.
boom.
It was a minute.
Was a minute?
It's the shortest Rumble ever.
Okay.
It's the least amount of depth. I mean, the Bushwhackers were in this in 95.
Right.
I mean, this is a dread. And they were like just bad. Dick Murdoch. I remember Vince McMahon at one point actually had the balls to say, Dick Murdoch's going to WrestleMania. And then I just was like, okay, there goes that buy rate. Okay.
Yeah, and again, it really shows you, too, the complete lacking in depth of the promotion. We talked about it previously about Jerry Jarrett coming in for a period of time. I think he was gone by 95, but that period of 93 through 95, on through this show when the Raw era had come in, episodic programming from week to week. But
Raw was not what it was when it started, and certainly not what it was today. It was very boring and stale during this period.
Well, it was, but here's the thing, too. What this reminds me of, because Diesel and Michaels had been the tag team champions until they're split up at the Survivor Series, and then Diesel goes on to win the title.
We're also in the Click heyday, by the way.
We are, but here's the thing, and this, it reminds me of basically territorial wrestling, be it Memphis or whatever, in terms of the thinness of it. I mean, you could just, this would be like Lawler and Dundee doing a program, okay? Like, they were tag team champions, then they lost the belts, one of them becomes the heavyweight champion, and they square off. Because Memphis had to do that. Memphis was reliant on the main events because down the card there just wasn't a whole lot. And you'd have to go back to the mid-'80s to find a time when they had any kind of depth there. That's what this reminds me of, Kyle Ross, because you've got a thing where with Diesel and Michaels, I mean, for them to pivot so effortlessly from the tag team scene to the main event scene for the WWF Championship tells you all you need to know about the major players in their way. This is as thin as this promotion probably has ever been in the expansion era.
It's important to note that Vince had been acquitted in the trial of his life.
Yes.
Between these WrestleManias in August. If you ever want to read about it, that is one of the most, short of the O.J. Simpson trial, which is obviously a much more serious charge.
Right.
We can't make light of that. There has never been a more bizarre courtroom saga played out than this. You had Nails threatening to kill. We're going way after, but threatening to kill Vince McMahon, and he gets acquitted. Okay, make a long story short, he gets acquitted. So now it's kind of like, all right, well, now it's time to build things back up, and then they went with Diesel as, quote, the new Hogan. They have him beat Bob Backlund in 9 seconds at Madison Square Garden, and he just kind of like Bret Hart. They did it in a more deliberately shocking fashion than Bret Hart's first title win, but again, you felt like this was a step back.
Yeah,
his title reign, and again, the Michaels thing. It was so natural, and the dynamic here. I guess we're going to talk about this match first, even though this match is not the biggest newsworthy match on the show, even though it's the world title match.
It didn't close it.
No, it didn't close.
20 minutes and 35 seconds. It was the anchor of the show in that sense.
Yeah, from the the touring part and the heart of the company. It was the major storyline, but it is one of WrestleMania 8. Obviously, the world title match did not close the show, and this one didn't either. It's interesting in the fact that this was the first time since Hogan that you had a babyface champion coming into WrestleMania.
Right.
And then it was the first time since Hogan beat Andre that the babyface champion retained the title.
Yes.
That was, and
6 was 2 baby faces, but I see what you mean.
But he dropped the title.
Yes.
And that is a formula that, with the world title, with a babyface coming in and retaining, that is a formula that you just haven't seen very much after this. And you didn't see a lot in the ones leading up to that. Well, I guess Bret Hart was a babyface going, and he drops to... But, the dynamic, I guess the legacy of this, what I'm getting at, as the match played out, Diesel and Shawn, the dynamic was just off. The crowd turns kind of in Shawn's favor because Shawn was outworking him. Bret Hart's kind of, was very critical of Shawn, saying basically he kind of did it on purpose. He kind of used he brought in Sid. We should mention that too.
Yeah.
We should mention that too, that he had brought Sid in as his bodyguard.
Right.
Since then Sid had some success in the USWA.
The dynamic of big, not great working face defending the title against smaller heel who's carrying the match in a work rate sense was very difficult.
And the crowd was smarter than it was now than the Hogan era, where they could appreciate who the star of the match was. It wasn't necessarily the good guy.
Right.
It was the guy carrying the match, and it was clearly Shawn. And Bret's kind of just out and out accused Shawn of kind of just like, grabbing, being a spotlight hog, basically saying he was going to use this match, even though
planting the seeds for a face turn.
The point of this match, is kind of established Diesel as this number one babyface, and Shawn kind of usurped the heat during the course of the match, whereas when Diesel did the Hulk up, the crowd was booing him.
Right.
And it's not a bad match. It's like in that 3 3/4 star range.
Right.
As far as a world title match in the early WrestleManias, it's one of the better, despite the screwed up dynamic, it's one of the better wrestling matches. I mean, certainly better than the majority of like the stuff Hogan gave you.
Right.
But from a star power perspective, though, this WrestleMania was not there. First of all, the event was in Hartford. We should bring up. I mean, this
a step back.
Yeah.
Much like how after WrestleMania 3, they go from the Dome to Trump Plaza, which was a step backwards. Trump Plaza
Trump Plaza was a big mecca for boxing in those eras.
Well, in relative standards, you're going from the absolute apex of 93,000 worked or otherwise to Trump Plaza as opposed to another dome. So in a relative sense, you're going from the apex to something great but still smaller. You've got WrestleMania 10 the year before at MSG, all the splendor of that. And
we didn't talk about what a good job they did promoting the heritage of WrestleMania.
They did.
10, by the way. They had a lot of great video packages.
Yeah.
I
spent a
that.
lot of time building up to it. It was almost kind of like the same thing here of a retrench. The Hartford Civic Center, I just, to this day, I can't believe they had it there.
Very emblematic of the lack of interest going into the WrestleMania 9, when we did that, I said by far there was no greater drop off in interest from a WrestleMania to the next than 8 to 9. Personally, I was more psyched for 10 than 9. It kind of bumped back up. Now, I don't know if I don't think the numbers bear that out. WrestleMania for years kind of trended down until it hit the nadir in 13.
But critically, 10 was a blip up in a bad era. Horrible era.
I think the people that were watching, it was a smaller sample size, were, I don't mean to speak for anyone, we're looking more forward to WrestleMania 10 because you had the 2 title matches, Bret Owen, ladder match. There's more to kind of sink your teeth into and from. You got to remember, it was largely a smart crowd that had stuck around for, not largely, but a good percentage was a smart crowd, and that was more stuff they could sink their teeth into, good matches. This, I remember, probably except for maybe the last couple of years, to be honest. So my interest in wrestling was at its low point, I can speak.
Well,
I remember, because as I've said many times, and as you know, I was a huge Shawn Michaels fan, and I was the last thing holding me in was the fact he was going to main event or be in the world title match at WrestleMania.
Right.
And I'm like, all right, I'll see what they do with this. If he wins, which he probably won't, I'll stick with it. If he loses, just screw. I don't really like Diesel. Just to heck with it. I'm not really interested in this product anymore.
Right.
WCW at this point was abysmal.
They were.
Okay, they had fallen off. They had tried to recreate the 80s of the WWF with everyone 10 years older and just awful. It was just awful.
Yeah.
So wrestling as a whole was at its low point. And this main event, I think, Shawn Michaels is obviously a huge name now, and Nash, Diesel would go on to be a big name too in the NWO. But going in, this just had the feeling. These guys were not perceived at the level of the guys in previous main events.
Well, how are you going to sell this to the mainstream? And basically, well, that's what it gets to.
And then let's transition.
This was a card ultimately where, although the Godwins wouldn't come in until later in the year, you got the sense that Vince was going into the hog pen and throwing poop at the wall because this card was just start to finish. At least it was short, and that's the thing in terms of the number of matches.
Well, they didn't have a lot of people they could turn to. I mean, there were not a lot of there were no quality performers that were left off this card. I don't think.
Unless he was injured, why was the 1-2-3 kid?
He may have been. He was in the corner of Razor Ramon.
Yeah, but I found that to be interesting.
Okay,
now he's not a quality performer. But Sid's got star power at least.
Well, true, but he would be pushed. I mean, there was a storyline.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Diesel-Shawn way. Diesel goes over.
Right.
And then the next night, they start up. That's when they did the monthly pay-per-views. Start up right
In
after
Your
the
House
show.
was coming up, the first
and
one.
the big draw was going to be they were going to do a Diesel-Shawn rematch. But they kind of cut this weird interview where they're like, yeah, it was kind of weird. That's still my boy. This feud doesn't feel natural. Mm-hmm. They didn't say feud, but they're like, that didn't feel natural fighting him, which was kind of funny because they were right. I think they were touching on a little reality that people didn't really want to see them wrestle.
Right.
And so, Sid, Sean's like, I'll give you the night off. Sid is my bodyguard. I'm going to go at Diesel man-to-man. Sid gets pissed, turns on him. Mm-hmm. Sean goes babyface. Sid's the top heel, and then 1995 stinks.
Well, they couldn't have done the match the next month anyways because, as I remember, Sid kind of botched the power bomb and injured his back for real.
Well, really?
That was, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sean was, I'm not sure that the idea was to go through with the Shawn Diesel rematch.
No, I don't think it ever was.
But they couldn't have anyways.
Oh, okay. I didn't.
He didn't wrestle on that show, and I don't think it was just a matter of selling the injury. Oh. So, yeah, somehow or another, Sean's back wasn't 100%. At that point. But this ended up not being the main event of the show as far as closing the show. It was a co-main event in terms of how it was billed. The main event of the show, and this is what I talk about throwing poop at the wall here, you go back to the Royal Rumble Tag Team Title Tournament. In the finals of the tournament, the Ted DiBiase managed team from the corporation of Bam Bam Bigelow.
You talk about something that was so hackneyed and emblematic of this era. The Ted DiBiase Corporation.
I like that idea in theory.
Well, yeah, it was a lot better when Vince McMahon.
But here's the thing, though. DiBiase as manager, I always thought that before he left at the very end, JBL would have been good in that role of. I like the whole moneyed corporation kind of a thing. Any kind of a knockoff of the Horsemen that you can make work. Mm-hmm. The problem is who they put in it. You go back to the previous year, Tatanka joins in a heel turn on Lex Luger.
He did what his people should have done years ago and taken the money, you see.
Exactly, yeah, as opposed to $24 and some beads for the island of Long Island or whatever it was, or Manhattan, I guess. But anyways, you got this, so... Lawrence Taylor gets into an altercation with Bam Bam Bigelow.
Who was the most talented guy in the corporation, probably.
Yes, that Taylor was laughing at Bam Bam.
Because they lose to the babyface underdog team of Kid and Holly. Yeah. Bob Holly.
Yeah, and I said...
And he should be laughed at for losing to them.
I said to you off air, how does it make sense that Bam Bam does the job in that match and then is in... the final match at WrestleMania, unless they were trying to do it, unless it was an overt presentation of Bam Bam Bigelow as a fairly mediocre pro wrestler. Can Lawrence Taylor, a non-wrestler, defeat a fairly mediocre pro wrestler?
Yeah, well, he had to lose to set the angle up to have LT laughing at him.
Couldn't it have been the same, like, say Tatanka loses, they get into a shoving match or whatever, Tatanka loses first, Taylor's just laughing in general.
Yeah, I guess you could
could still sell the frustration even if he hadn't eaten the pinfall.
All right, look, here's the problem with this. It's obvious, the whole thing. Let me just bottom.
It was a desperate attention grab.
Okay, yeah, you took the... Never mind then.
Oh.
Okay. All right. Yes, yeah. It was...
I'm sorry, I didn't know I was bogarting your whole point.
Yeah,
okay.
That was pretty much the meat and potatoes, and the crux of the argument that, yes, this was total desperation. They looked at a card that they, did a bad number anyway. But that they needed something to get the mainstream public to buy into, so they went with Lawrence Taylor. Let's put the wrestling dynamic aside for just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
The main problem I had with this is LT was several years... Well, look, make no mistake about it. I believe Lawrence Taylor was the greatest defensive player in the history of the NFL.
Okay.
Whether you agree with that or not is irrelevant, because he's in the discussion, okay? He was a major name in the history of this league.
Sam Huff says hi.
Sam Huff, give me a break. Okay, Dad. All right. Thanks for coming over. Sam Huff.
Wow. I didn't think you were going to crap on it that badly.
Sam Huff.
Well, it's just the first name that came to mind. I don't know. Who else would I go with? Bruce Smith? I don't know.
He's out there. Reggie White.
Okay.
They can turn a wristwatch into a toaster oven. I wonder if Jeremy Lin can do that. That's Reggie's words, not mine.
Nice.
But he was several years, and to me, it wasn't like he was playing. It wasn't like this was done. It wasn't like when they got, say, Refrigerator Perry in '86 at WrestleMania 2. There's a comparison.
No, you're right.
You're
right.
He was kind of past his prime. He had some kind of, publicized troubles. This reeked of just desperation on all sides. WWE needing a celebrity and LT needing money for crack.
Yeah,
okay?
And underage hooers.
Well, yeah. So,
not to put too fine a point on it.
Yes, but yeah, that's well, there you go. And I guess it did draw some eyes, because it got them on Sports Center. They of course showed the gratuitous Sports Center plugs. I don't know how you felt about. I don't know if you have Charlie Steiner in the same category as Colin Coward. Well, that's a different story for a different day.
Charlie Steiner got out and kept his credibility, but. By the way, the other celebrity aspect of this thing here, we glossed over it. Pamela Anderson in the corner of Diesel and Jenny McCarthy, along with Psycho Sid in the corner of Shawn Michaels.
They decided
desperate.
The talent roster was not marquee enough, and they just went out with JTT with a cup of coffee here.
I believe Salt and Peppa sang Lawrence Taylor to the ring.
Yeah. Nick Turturro from NY, who I thought gave a kind of a workman-like effort as a celebrity. He was certainly the least impressive name of the group, but I thought he tried. He gave a good accounting for himself as the ring announcer. But
but it just shows you the tier of celebrities here versus like WrestleMania 1 or whatever, how they'd fallen.
Yeah, wrestling was not cool at this point. Not to and the match itself is not bad. LT versus Bigelow. As far as a there's non-wrestlers and there's non-wrestlers.
It really exceeded the low expectations.
Yeah, LT, I will give him credit.
Worked his
and
ass
everyone
off.
admits
and Bam
this.
Bam carried him.
Everyone admits this. LT did a good job of getting into shape.
Yeah.
And he took it seriously. There's some of these celebrities get out there, and granted, now they were never put in a position like that.
Learn the moves. What a maneuver.
Yes. Well, yeah. Even Vince could call Lawrence Taylor's moveset, I think.
Yes.
But here's the problem with the match, and you knew it going in, and it was going to kill the career of Bigelow. It didn't make the career of Bigelow; it killed him. And they tried this face turn afterwards,
sympathetic turn,
and that could have worked.
Well, the click buried him.
Yeah, but Diesel hated him and didn't want to team up with him at King of the Ring. They did. Remember the main event of King of the Ring '95: Diesel and Bigelow versus Sid and Tatanka.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's a thing where.
Not exactly when the Mega Powers meet the Mega Bucks.
No,
okay?
Exactly. And here's the problem. You need wrestling logic to work to at least some degree. So let's look at this in a kayfabe sense. That the corporation has put everything on this match.
Yeah, and that's the thing, too. They were like the big heel group, and that was their only... Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And afterwards, and Ted DiBiase is calling him a loser because he lost to a non-wrestler. And we're supposed to disagree with Ted DiBiase just because he's an objectionable fellow? From a kayfabe standpoint,
you're right.
It doesn't hold up.
Yeah, you're right. And, the corporation kind of rebuilt it because Sid, obviously.
Yeah, they were pricks about it, but in a kayfabe sense, they weren't wrong.
It just, it killed Bigelow. Even till his days down the road.
Yeah.
Didn't you always, when you looked at Bam Bam Bigelow... now there were other people who probably maybe didn't even watch during this year that didn't know.
Right.
Okay, and that helps, when he came back. But, he kind of rebuilt his image a little in ECW.
Right.
And then, he came in with a bit of steam challenging Goldberg in WC. I love that angle, by the way.
Yeah.
They could have gone somewhere. That didn't do anything. Typical of that era. But he always had that stink, at least with me, having watched it, of, God, Bam Bam Bigelow, very talented big man, but he's the classic what could have been guy. Injuries screwed his first reign up with WWF.
Right.
Second reign, totally killed by this.
It was, but here's the thing too, and I go back to,
and it's proven he was gone by the end of the year.
In different circumstances.
He wasn't even in the company the next year.
No, he wasn't. And he would have these spaces where he was out of the mainstream and then would reappear somewhere. It was never a linear thing with him. Just shows up immediately here. Aside from when he screwed over ECW allegedly and showed up in WCW like that. But here's the thing, though. I don't look at him in the same way. I almost feel like I'm downgrading Bam Bam to make the comparison because he was a better worker than Luger. But I look at Bam Bam, and again, I'm a kid of the 80s with the aftermags. And it's a thing where I look at Bam Bam as, gee, I thought his career was going to be more than that. The same way I looked at Luger.
Yes. No, though that's a very...
Do you see the same thing?
I could almost put, to a lesser, Sting in that same case.
Sting
kind of like... Yeah, there's a lot... Well, Sting...
These men will be the superstars of the 90s.
And they weren't. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, you made... Yes.
Unlike Larry Cameron, at least they were on this side of the earth. But still.
Exactly. The Bigelow-Luger comparison is valid.
Yeah, I mean,
this just. You just knew,
and this was a nail in the coffin moment for Bigelow, such as Luger had in his career.
And he just didn't get the. I mean, like I said, he was out of the promotion in 8 months
because
the Click didn't like it. That sped it up.
In the late '80s, I mean, before he even got to the WWF, there's a reason because we talked about it in the previous WrestleManias when he came in, and he was so hot in the early days there. He was carrying the momentum in from the territories. He was a killer, like in Memphis and in World Class and those places. I mean, the late '80s, Bam Bam Bigelow.
He was, like we talked about it when he first came, was the number 2 babyface for a very short period at the '87 Survivor Series.
Big fat guys were not supposed to be able to fly around like that. So
but it was
a waste. Yeah. So I mean, he's one of these. You look at it with both Bigelow and Luger. You can look at it and say, okay, well, how many guys even main evented WrestleMania or whatever? But these are guys that were probably supposed to have multiple ones under their belts and never did. And that's how that went.
And unfortunately, Sean, that's what's remembered. When you think of WrestleMania 11, if I say name 2 letters from WrestleMania, obviously, what do you say? But if I said, tell me one thing, what's the first thing that pops in your mind when I mention WrestleMania 11?
Well,
Lawrence Taylor. Yeah. It's Lawrence Taylor, and that's not a good thing.
Well, and putting it on in the main event spot. It's one thing
if it's like a middle of the card thing, you're right. But
but it's
against a guy that you're maybe just saying, hey, you know what, a guy, Bam Bam, it was. It's not like he had like this ton of heat build up for a while. If it's a guy who you want to just job out of the promotion, that's what you do. A guy who's been doing like. You know what? Like
you still don't put a guy in the main event spot that you're jobbing out of the promotion. It's got to be an investment. But how do you make an investment in a guy that's doing the job? It's antithetical.
Although I loathed it at the time and still loathe it to this day. Mm-hmm. From the promotion's perspective, a fair, I don't know if that's the right word, example of jobbing a guy, giving a guy a. There's a difference between just like doing a mean spirit, like the Miz. What they've done to the Miz the last week is mean spirited.
Poor Miz.
Okay, and then there's making a big deal about the guy's exit. He doesn't leave in a flattering way at all.
Right.
But it's kind of like a big deal, not like an afterthought.
Right.
Would be like Jeff Jarrett when he did the big JOB to China out the door.
How about we talked about WrestleMania 3, Adrian Adonis?
He had built up all this heat for a long time.
Right.
And it's like he gets his from kind of an unlikely source. Piper's a more likely source. That's kind of why I went with the China Jarrett thing.
Okay.
China, an unconventional opponent.
Right.
It works then, but not if you're going to try to push the guy on top. And
it was just ridiculous how that ended up going. Yeah, this is the first thing everybody thinks of. But we talked about it before. WrestleMania 8 sort of broke the seal as far as the world title match was defended in the middle of the card before intermission, but that's because you had the Hogan match on last.
And this was not before intermission. It was the second to last match, which could be kind of a slap in the face.
They'd kind of done away with the concept of intermission, I think, by this point.
Oh, intermission was gone. Yeah, that's true. That's very true. That's very true, Ricky.
It's but my point is, it's one thing when you've still got Hogan in the promotion and you're going to put him on last. But it's another thing altogether when it's Lawrence Taylor. You've relegated the world title to an earlier spot on the card for your desperation celebrity angle. And then that was just emblematic of the desperation of the time.
It would have almost been like putting Floyd Mayweather Big Show on last instead of Edge Undertaker.
Well, and here's the thing, too. They toyed around at that show because of the magnitude of it, of putting the Flair match on last, and Flair, I think, is reputed to, and Michaels is reputed to have said, no, you got to put a title match on last. You got to do that.
At least that would have been less offensive, because at least you're talking about touring guys.
Right. And that also, too, there was some talk about should Hogan Rock have gone on last at 18, and it ended up being Triple H Jericho, and they couldn't follow it, much like how in 2009 Triple H and Orton couldn't follow what came before.
Yeah, but that's why, of course, I don't think anyone's talking. Well, this year, I don't think Rock Cena's going on before intermission.
No. Clearly it will not be. So, tradition or no, they've learned their lesson on this one here. Blowing through a weak undercard, The Allied Powers, a potentially promising tag team, but that they never pulled the trigger.
Well, Luger
with.
quit.
Never
Luger
made
quit
them
on
champs.
Yeah.
Well, they were probably going. I think they were going to break them up at that point. Weren't they doing the Davey Boy Smith turn?
They actually
anyways?
did. That was going to be a thing. You're right. They never. Who was? Oh, well,
I kind of don't get why they didn't give them a run on top. Luger and the British, but in a thin period of time too. Luger and the British Bulldog, an interesting team. Defeating the Blue Brothers, Jacob and Eli with Uncle Zebediah as the neo-Nazi Harris brothers in one of their incarnations in the big time here.
Lex Luger, how the mighty have fallen from one WrestleMania to the next.
Yes, exactly. Wrestling an opening match against a couple guys who had to cover up their swastikas with ring gear in order to be able to go out there at WrestleMania. So nothing much more needs to be said about that one.
Well, they were the Allied Powers.
Yeah, they were. The one thing I'll say is this. Theoretically, we talked about stepping stone Mania matches from the past, whether it be at WrestleMania 3 with the Can-Am Connection, whether it be with the LOD at WrestleMania 7. Theoretically, this match could have been used to set them up for a title match.
It was a token throwaway to put them over. You know, it was just yeah.
But it could have been a stepping stone match.
But because it wasn't, it makes it even worse.
They didn't go that
more
way.
Pointless. Yes.
Yeah, they didn't go that way with it.
Good point, Ricky.
Thank you. Razor Ramon with a 1-2-3 kid defeated Intercontinental Champion Jeff Jarrett with a roadie by disqualification. Singles match for the Intercontinental title at 13:32. This was at the tail end of when they would still do those screw job title finishes. We haven't seen those.
The problem was that they did the title change at the Royal Rumble. They probably didn't want to job Ramon again, or Ramon didn't want to job again.
Yeah.
And so they do this all, Jarrett was so overrated during this period. I'm sorry. Jeff Jarrett's always been overrated.
Yeah.
But it made sense. It's like, okay, like I remember when they did the program with him and Ramon. It's like, okay, Jarrett's going to get the title.
JOBBER.
Yeah, exactly. And it just kind of was like, I remember just when he has the best match of his career against Shawn Michaels in the summer when he loses it in Nashville. They made a big deal he was booed in his hometown or whatever. And I just remember just being like, thank God they got the belt off him.
He's a guy, I look at him with his training and his capability and everything like that.
He kind of was maybe that Luger Bigelow,
Yeah, he should. I look at him a little bit differently in the sense of he should be so much better than he is. His matches don't have very good psychology. He doesn't seem to string together things
other than
much.
that Michaels match at In Your House 2, which is a tough tape to get a hold on, kids. So well, then again, you can just go on YouTube these days, damn kids.
Yeah.
But what's Jeff Jarrett's second best match ever?
Oh, I don't
Do
even
we want to spend any time doing this? Okay.
No, that's...
I'm leaving that up to the listener. What is Jeff Jarrett's second best match ever?
Yeah, he's nothing to write home about. But he should be, though. I look at him like he should be. He's got a decent move set. He's got... I don't know. I guess if he had a better head for stringing together matches, I think he could be a superstar.
Nobody's second generation. I mean...
But he's not... He doesn't have the most charisma in the world either. I don't know. Maybe I think he should be more than he is. Should have been more than he is.
He's a guy that I think maybe came around a little too late. He could have been a great territorial. I mean, obviously, territory. He just
isn't that what TNA is?
Yeah. But even then, he just seemed kind of overrated, which is bad.
I mean, he was the Orlando.
Well, but then again, the problem with him
he was the
TNA,
Orlando City champion for a couple of times.
Yeah. But even the problem with him in TNA is you just know he's there because WWF doesn't want him,
right?
Which is a big problem,
right?
But that's a different podcast
exactly.
for a different day, as they say.
Yes, Undertaker defeated King Kong Bundy singles match with Larry Young as guest referee. I don't remember how that came to pass.
Baseball was on strike still, maybe.
When Larry Young was an umpire?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I don't know why he didn't factor into the match. The Undertaker wins with the clothesline. There are a few things as uninspired as the 1995 return of King Kong Bundy.
Yeah, that was not a good run. Owen Hart and Yokozuna, the tag team champions.
By the way, that starts continue. I guess with Giant Gonzalez. The Undertaker just being fed these awful opponents, why he's when people curse his existence still being around today, you have to feel for what the guy went through during this period.
Giant Gonzalez and
Kamala,
that whole era,
Kamala, Yokozuna. Oh boy,
yeah, that was
God bless his soul.
That was a bad era. Owen Hart and the aforementioned Yokozuna with Mr. Fuji and Jim Cornette, the tag team champions, defeating the Smoking Guns. Billy and Bart Gunn.
Yokozuna, important. He was a mystery partner here. He had disappeared since the Survivor Series. He lost the casket match to The Undertaker.
Okay.
Neidhart had been fired And Owen and they did some kayfabe thing where, I need to have a real partner and get a real shot. I got a mystery partner for WrestleMania. And it was one of those deals where I always hated the Smoking Guns anyway. I didn't like how they
they were horrible.
I hated how they wrestled in jeans. That really I just always viewed that as very uncomfortable, and they had like bad mullets and mustaches.
I was never that impressed with their move set. They just never.
There were some matches where they tried hard. You'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But here the issue, I just hated the jeans so much. But anyway, it was one of those deals where once Owen Hart introduced Yokozuna as a mystery partner, there was nobody in that building that thought that there wasn't going to be a title switch. And I remember this match going too long. Like, it should have just been like a huge squash.
And actually, as I read this again, the Guns were the champs, and then they dropped the belts here. The one thing is, too, hindsight's 20/20, but and I understand that Yokozuna had to do the return job to The Undertaker, but the fact that, you know how after a guy's on top, particularly when he's a heel, he's got to repay some jobs to some of the guys that he beat in there? Yeah. In retrospect, you would have rather had Yokozuna be less jobbed out so that he could have had a credible main event or two. Not that the matches would have been great, but the star power of him in there with Diesel.
Yeah, the thing is, they tried it with Mabel, and that worked wonders. But so I can only imagine. Who knows? But the problem is I think that long reign he had, people were so like, oh God, please somebody put an end to give this title reign the old Yeller treatment. I think, and I know me personally watching time, just did not want him in the main event. You're right, from a star power perspective, it could have helped. I just did not.
But especially in the in your house era with monthly pay-per-views, throw it in there for a month.
Sure, but his weight was becoming a major concern.
It was
as well, and Owen and Yoko should have worked better as a team.
Right.
It was amazing. Yokozuna would just come in for obviously when Owen needed a rest or something for a quick minute.
Yeah.
He still put that damn nerve hold on.
Right.
He would be in there for a minute, and 30 seconds was that and he'd rest for God was.
We talk about the WWF, particularly in the 80s. They always loved tag teams like the Killer Bees, real similarities, whatever. Has there ever been a tag team of two guys less similar than Owen Hart and Yokozuna stylistically?
But those teams kind of work sometimes.
Sure, they do.
I mean, Brett and Jim Neidhart was certainly not. Brett and Jim Neidhart were certainly not as different.
You're
as
right.
This.
The outfits were alike, but nothing else.
Yeah, but it should. You know what I'm saying? I thought the dynamic was kind of good on paper, where you had the big heavyweight who would just come in and do the
S heel who would hide behind him.
Yeah, and Owen would do the bulk of the work.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good.
It's kind of like the Dream Team if Brutus Beefcake weighed 600 pounds. So if they got together today, in other words.
Yeah, exactly. Real similarities there. The only other match we didn't talk about, the one that would be considered the third match on the card in terms of importance because of the star power of the guys in it, Bret Hart defeated Bob Backlund in an I Quit match with Roddy Piper as special referee at 9:34. This is one Bret talks about at some length in his memoirs as being disappointed with and feeling that it was goofy. And
it's one of those things that, like, Ray Charles could see that Bret was getting his job back here, not to be disrespectful to anybody. And there was no heat behind it because they crushed Backlund so badly to Diesel. Roddy Piper I've never seen a special guest referee hurt a match. Roddy Piper may have hurt this match. He was like, he kept asking, "Do you quit?"
Bret kind of inferred that.
That's
like
what
Roddy,
did he?
Like that Roddy was being goofy.
Because I thought that was a Kyle Ross special, like something that only I. That's amazing. Bret noticed. I really respect Bret's knowledge.
Well, here's the thing too, and I don't. Again, I respect Bret as a past two-time guest on the show here. I don't want to put words in his mouth. It may be that Bret thought that the bookers, that whoever designed the match was having Roddy do that. I'm not saying Bret blamed Roddy directly, but I'm saying that Bret thought that the way that Roddy was doing the thing, whether it was his choice or somebody else's, was too
bad.
goofy.
He was like, kept.
Do you quit? Do you quit?
Yeah, it was like kind of like, no, he doesn't. Okay, like stop it, Roddy Piper. I'm going to punch you.
Yeah, but you know what?
By the way, this WrestleMania also that didn't help it. It had technical issues.
Right.
My video that I got, which is actually released by the company, I actually got the WrestleMania Anthology 1 through 13 way back when. It was like this was like the replay version. Like there was technical problems. This was just it's disappointing. Bret Backlund.
The last thing I'm going to say about that, the only person I blame is whoever decided Bret Hart, that Roddy Piper was going to be the special ref.
You
don't bring in Roddy Piper for the kind of subtle type nuances that you want from somebody holding the mic.
Yeah.
Roddy Piper's going to be a ham.
Yeah, this was a throw. I mean, it was a throwaway.
It's
anyway.
all he knows. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that back when the nefarious means he used to win, but this is either the second or third worst. 9 is the worst.
Right.
This is either the second or third worst. I change my mind sometimes. Okay. So by the way, in the bottom quintet there, we have 4 filled out. By the way, Ricky, I know you're keeping score at home with pencil and paper. 1, 2, 9, and 11 are all in the bottom quintet there.
Okay. Well, 12 was no great shakes either. We'll get to that. But 12 was an improvement. Yeah. Interesting how that went with 9 and 11 and the odd ones. Being some of the absolute dregs
and
there.
And then 10 being all the way up top. You talk about a huge,
and 12 was another upturn.
Not nearly as big.
Which would lead to another downturn in 13 because of it being the biggest one-match card maybe in pro wrestling history.
Well, from a not from a drawing perspective, from a from a kind
historical
of a hindsight perspective.
Yeah.
But you want to talk about you talk about one-match shows. I have never
in billing. This one is
WrestleMania 12 is probably. I mean, we talk about Hogan Warrior, WrestleMania 6. Obviously, this did not have the star power of that, but given what was underneath, which wasn't much, and that you knew the amount of time these guys were going to be given, the 60 minutes,
I
mean. This is the definition of one-match show. I mean, again, you take your 2 top guys, both baby faces, put them against each other. You don't leave much on the undercard. Now, the difference between this and WrestleMania 6 is obviously this is only half the matches. And Brett, Shawn go an hour as opposed to 20 minutes. But and the undercard matches get more time than they did back in 90. But
And Shawn Michaels appearing in this match, challenging Bret Hart for the championship, winning it at an hour and a minute and 52 seconds. They went to overtime since there was no fall in the in the first hour, which that's a curious decision for an Iron Man match.
Yeah, I don't understand why they did it.
It was
some people say
to set up the controversy of the overtime. Clearly, I think
I didn't like that. I'm going to say something about first. Most people or most lists or analysis of this match, I generally view that most people either overrate this match or underrate this match. I think this match is both underrated and overrated by most people.
That.
Where, to me, from a rating perspective, I give it 4.5 stars, making it one of the, when you take a look at...
Oh, that's higher than I thought you were going to say. Okay.
When you take a look at the first 12 WrestleManias, that's top 5. Okay, the only matches that get of the first 12 WrestleManias, the only 5 matches that get at least 4.5 stars: Savage Steamboat, Savage Warrior.
Okay.
Oh, the 6 actually. I'm sorry, I miscounted. Math was never my strong suit. Savage Flair gets 4 3/4. The 2 from WrestleMania 10 get 5 stars.
Okay.
So there's 5 right there, and this would be 6th.
Okay.
So this is when it went down, this was the 6th best match in WrestleMania history.
I can understand the confusion on the numbers. This isn't ounces on a scale, so I can understand that.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Cuban B.
Very nice.
Yes, very nice, Cuban B.
Thank you.
But to me, I don't like the booking of the no falls in an hour. To me, you should, and I'll get to this in a minute. But at the end of the day, it's still the 2 best workers of the period, 2 of the best of all time, doing their thing for an hour. You know what I'm saying? Now, I think, and I guess maybe they thought they had to because it was such a short card. I think, considering the way it played out, I think they should not have done an Iron Man match. They should have, what they should have done is just announce a match, have it go the hour time limit, and do overtime.
How could you have built in the demand for overtime sans Iron Man? How do you if it's announced as a 60-minute match and the champion defends by draw?
I mean, well, I don't know what the justification was for doing it with the Iron Man gimmick, to be honest. Not to go all Bret Hart on you, but I mean, to me, there's no.
True.
To me, it's like, okay, you're going to wrestle for 60 minutes. Guy at the end with the most falls wins. Well, okay.
Couldn't you just say no time limit then? That would accomplish a lot the same
No,
thing,
because because to your point, they obviously wanted to do the kind of the built-in controversy with the overtime.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I mean.
So to me, I just think that it would have added more drama because the problem was, and people have talked about this, that the live crowd was not that cool with the gimmick. There were people that were getting up and leaving during the match because. Look, you and I are different than your average spamool in row 33, okay?
Right.
Okay, your average fan, even people that I know that really like it takes there aren't a lot of people that want to, the masses, the mainstream, John Q. Walmart, if you will.
Right.
Does not have a lot of desire to watch an hour wrestling match.
Right.
I thought it was well worked. I just don't like how there was no falls, especially when there were so many spots where there should have been.
I mean, as much as I don't want to admit it,
they didn't like each other either. Which there always kind of seem to be spots where it's like I kind of when I watch this, and I have to admit it's been a while since I've watched this match, where I remember saying, if these guys liked each other better, I think that spot would have looked better. You know what I'm saying?
It could have been, yeah. The cooperation might not have been there, and again,
now they both complimented each other and said. It was a very good, and that's what I say. To me, this was a borderline. This was kind of because of the stage it was at. And
right.
This took match of the year in a lot of the kind of kayfabe non-observer polls.
Right.
I think when WWE did a countdown of their best WrestleMania matches, it was like right near the top.
Right.
Just put it in perspective. I had it 6th best at the time when it would happen.
Right.
Right now it's like 13. So it's not. I mean, it's not even a top 10 WrestleMania match.
When you talk about this,
which is kind of disappointing when you consider the participants.
And the guys in it, and how guys like me and you look at wrestling versus how the masses do. I mean, I guess the best example would be like for as much as I like, say, for example, the Dragon Gate style. Would I like the WWE better today if you had those great wrestlers like CM Punk and Daniel Bryan or whatever used Dragon Gate style? Sure, I would prefer it. Would it appeal to the masses as much as it does? No, I don't think so. So I think that's the difference. That's the divide. Guys like me and you like something that will never be as popular as the mainstream, reach.
Yeah, I think they were trying to kind of this is going to be this great match. I just don't think they should have announced it as an Iron. I just don't like if you're going to do an Iron Man match. The point of the gimmick is to have multiple falls in the time period.
Let me just ask you a little bit of devil's advocate here. How would you have introduced the element of controversy into it, knowing that you?
I would have done the exact same match.
Okay.
Just without the Iron Man gimmick. I would have just had them go to a 60-minute draw.
Okay.
And have Gorilla Monsoon say there must be a winner, which is what he did anyway. Wouldn't
that be more of a heel move for Monsoon to do? Than he did in this one. At least with an Iron Man match, there must be a winner. I mean, it's debatable.
No,
but as far as restarting a match where the champion has defended it by draw,
he did anyway. To me, if he would have used the statement, "There must be a winner" beforehand, you could squeeze it out. Besides, here's the thing: everyone knew Shawn was winning here anyway. So I mean, it's
pretty much
yes.
But the way that
by the way, why didn't Ultimate Warrior say? Get the F out of my ring to Hulk Hogan. And by the way, Shawn did to Bret here, reportedly.
Yeah, that was...
Whereas Shawn says, I don't really recall saying that.
Yeah, non-denial denial.
Yeah.
But the other thing, too, just a note as far as how this was done. And, Shawn Michaels, that they had been doing the build since the fall there. They did the concussion angle with him. He came back at Royal Rumble. He won.
He had all the heat. Bret always claims he was a lame duck champion here, and he was kind of right.
Yeah, he was. But I just look at this whole thing in getting him ready for this. They introduced Shawn's longtime real-life mentor, Jose Lothario, as his manager, which I see as it's not as bad as Smiling Diesel, but taking the heartbreak
I hated Jose Lothario.
Yeah.
I had no offense to him. I'm sure he's a very nice man.
But didn't it work against his character?
Yeah,
They were pigeonholing Shawn into the same thing as everybody else.
It was, I mean,
let's remove what makes Shawn and make him more in the mold of traditional WWF babyface world.
I don't know if they were. I don't know if they were trying to make Jose Lothario the Hispanic Arnold Skaaland.
Kind of, yeah. That's a great parallel.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I hate babyface managers as a general rule. I mean, they're usually worthless. Paul Bearer pulled it off, but he was just had one guy.
Precious Paul could make it work pretty good. It depends.
But generally, baby faces don't need managers. Managers are for heels,
right?
That usually can't talk.
Yeah. So you and I agree on that.
I don't know what that was. I don't know if Sean just wanted that or what. But I always I never when they dropped Jose Lothario from the storyline.
Right.
I was not. I remember several weeks later not being like, whatever happened to Jose Lothario?
They the high point of the entire Jose Lothario angle was I know later in the year I think they did a thing of Sid assaulting him with the camera and everything, and I think his son went to go attend to him in the back.
Pete Lothario, and then Sid beat him up too.
And that was
that they wrote him out basically.
And I'm trying to. I think it was Jerry Lawler that had the line of, "I understand that's Jose's son, Hose B." Like that is a great line.
Oh, my favorite was at the King of the Ring when Cam Cornette got into it with Sean Warrior and Ahmed Johnson. That real motley crew.
Yes.
Jim Cornette goes, "That no good Jose Lothario pulled a switchblade on me."
That is awesome.
Jimmy C.
That is awesome. As we start working our way here on
not much on the undercard here. This is from a match perspective. This was obviously
better than last year.
When you have an out,
and the guys were a little more over by and large than last year, relatively
most of the
speaking.
Stuff in programs, and I'll say this: placing this in. This is the very rarely mentioned average WrestleMania range. To me, if you were to line up the 27 previous WrestleManias, this one might be dead middle.
This is
7 is the only one that has gotten the average designation group so far. This one's slightly better than 7.
I'll say above average just because to me, and I place emphasis on this, on the whole, to me, it's a very inoffensive undercard.
Very inoffensive. You've got a good match. Good, is it disappointing? Maybe it's not as bad as it's not as disappointing as some would say.
Right.
But nothing outright. Well.
Well, we'll get.
I take that. I was going to say nothing outright sucked on this show, but
We'll get to that.
I thought of something.
We'll hit bullet points on these. This is the only time thus far where I've brought up a dark match / free for all, but because it played
the first one.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well,
this was the very first one they ever did.
All right. Well, they did dark matches previously that I didn't reference, but this one was on the free for all that you could watch for free before the pay-per-view on the channel there. I'm only mentioning it because tag team match for the vacant tag team championship, the Body Donnas Skip and Zip with Sonny defeated the Godwins Henry and Phineas with Hillbilly Jim. At 5:21. The less said about that abortion, the better.
Yeah, the tag team division was just a backdrop for Sonny at this point.
It really was. Camp Cornette, a name which I always just found weird and stupid and indie-rific. I love Jim Cornette, but I don't like the name. It doesn't sound big time to me.
It wasn't really official, but
it doesn't sound big time to me. I just don't like it. But his team of it was a 6-man tag: Vader, Owen, Hart, and the British Bulldog. With Cornette defeated Yokozuna, Jake Roberts, and Ahmed Johnson with Mr. Fuji. Just throwing a bunch of guys in there.
I kind of like, it was
12:51.
But people were Yoko would turn face. And it didn't work because his weight was becoming a major issue, and no one wanted to work with him. But Ahmed was really over during this period. He would peak a few months after this. Jake obviously kind of was doing the nostalgia thing. He was pretty new.
Right.
I remember kind of thinking that this wasn't bad. I watched it. It's not a bad match, and it's kind of cool that the heel team won.
They did.
Which was the right move.
Right.
Yoko obviously couldn't do the job, and Ahmed shouldn't. So Jake Roberts. Let
me ask you this: shades of what we talked about with the previous WrestleMania, the mixed tag match between Savage and Dusty that I thought should have been straight up. You have here potentially the 1993 Dream match, which you would see ultimately on lesser pay-per-view, Vader and Yoko. That should have been the heads-up match, I think. Just go to Vader and Yoko.
Yeah, they did it. I think at the Next in Your House.
Yeah.
I think.
But that's a WrestleMania match on stature.
Or was it canceled? Well, you needed to get Ahmed and Jake the payday.
Then do a separate tag match.
Well, you know what's funny? I think they did that at that Good Friends, but I think that's what they did. I think they did the Vader Yoko stand.
Yeah, I would have split them off. That's just my. preference. The ringmaster, soon to be known as Steve Austin, with Ted DiBiase, defeated Savio Vega in 10 minutes.
They knew
exactly.
How much talent he had from the minute they brought him in.
Yes, that's why they were going to call him Ice Dagger.
Yeah, or the ringmaster with Ted DiBiase as a mouthpiece.
Yeah, that's
with the $1 million title gimmick.
It writes itself. Yes,
not a bad match. This was Austin's first. Well, no, he wasn't the ringmaster here.
According to Wikipedia.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Wikipedia can stick that he was. I believe he was freshly minted Stone Cold Steve Austin. I will have to check the back of my tape.
Okay.
If you'd like to.
And I understand that list, Chili McFreeze of the suggested names. I already mentioned Ice Dagger on there, and I believe that the closest that they came to his eventual name was so-called Steve Austin.
But no, it was cool. Again, it's kind of cool that the right guy goes over.
Yes.
But this was Austin's first feud was with Savio Vega. Savio's kind of like that reliable hand that would always do the job.
Yeah, he was a good worker, but solid mid card. Ultimate Warrior in a minute 36 defeated Hunter Hearst Helmsley with Sable.
Yeah, we shouldn't gloss over this.
Big historical.
Well, first of all, this Wikipedia
match.
Sometimes I have a problem with this website.
Okay.
Personally, when you're just doing it for point of reference of the card. With Sable, people are like, what? She was kind of like unnamed at this point. I think they may have said, we understand this woman's name is Sable. Because Triple H was doing something where he was just bringing like a hot broad out with him.
Right.
He was still the snobby. He was still fully. He was still pretty new, actually.
Right.
He was really new, actually.
Right.
No, I take that back. No, this was 95 is when he was really new. But was when he first came in. But
they were doing the thing too. Again, Sable at the time, anyways, Mark Mero's real life wife. That led to a thing very shortly thereafter where Triple H was kind of roughing her up, giving her a hard time. Mero comes to her rescue. Sable then transfers to Mero.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think they get into a fight, I think, later in the show. Mero had just signed. He signed a big deal.
Right.
He was very improved. When they got him, he was at his peak, I thought. He was pretty good. I mean, he deserved, I thought, that kind of a shot at that Intercontinental reign. The injuries derailed him, though, and he was never the same, and he was then overshadowed by his wife.
Right, and
we shouldn't gloss over this Ultimate Warrior return. This was like kind of like the other hook they gave.
Right.
That they hoped that to a real desperate attempt to bring him back, and Triple H was not being the Click incident had not happened yet, obviously. Right. So this wasn't he was just the guy, and Warrior comes out, he no-sells the pedigree, which, today would, earn you immediate firing.
Right.
But back then it was just what he was supposed to do. And, yeah, he just it's funny to see Triple H get this crushed. It's also funny, but he's much skinnier, by the way.
He was, exactly.
Before Sheamus could work out with him all the time.
By the way, I'm about to make a joke that might indicate that I'm a brave man. I'm not a brave man. I'm only going to make this joke because at this stage of life, if I needed to, in self-defense, one good punch to Brock Lesnar's colon would kill him. So that's the only reason I'm going to make this joke. But kids, go out there and Google Sable, sleaze thread, latex, and vegan. I'll leave it at that.
Oh, no,
that's a tremendous story.
But, this was this was like a big drawing point, and
yeah, the return of the Warrior,
and like all Ultimate Warrior returns, it lasted for a couple months, and he started no-showing, and they fired him.
Yeah, it went nowhere. In terms of star power...
Yeah, he was feuding with Jerry Lawler 2 months later.
Right.
Over a piece of art. Yeah,
and wearing a ball cap so as not to get glass in his hair when he gets hit with a frame, which was a wimp move.
Is that... Are you for serious?
Yeah, Lawler talks about that in his book.
God, you read a lot of books. Why
don't
I
not
read
only
these
that...
books?
Well, I'll have to loan it to you. Well, it was also, I take it you never watched the Ultimate Burial of the Ultimate Warrior, or whatever they called their DVD. All right. Lawler talks about it on there. That
you have to
Warrior
remember my state of, I always...
Well, that's true. Well, Warrior came out there in a ball cap, and Lawler was like, oh, crap. Angle alert. The guy's wearing a ball cap, and he's never worn one before, with a ponytail, no less. But it was a thing where he didn't trust, because Lawler was telling him, look, which the only thing I'll say in defense of the Warrior is that is one of those things where somebody can give you all the assurances you want, but how do you know you're not going to get glass in your eye or anything like that?
But I mean, man, look, it's an odd job. You're signing up for it, man.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll give you that.
Okay, you don't want to get hit in the head with glass. Become a used car salesman.
Well, not only that, I mean, if it's me at the time when I know the frame is swinging, I'm closing my eyes already. There are things you can do to kind of protect yourself on that.
Oh, bull! Yeah, I remember wearing a ball cap and me being like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, and then
hit the bricks, Jim Hellwig.
Exactly, and then he's got to act like the shot phased him. The last two matches we haven't talked about here had a pretty decent amount of star power for that time. Undertaker in what was to be the beginning of the end of Diesel defeated him, got his revenge in 1646 in a singles match.
I was hip to the internet at this point. I was the old AOL, and I was in chat rooms. I knew at this point that he was leaving. I thought this was good, and I remember I thought this was going to be it. Like, I thought this was going to be the mother of all burials.
Attention list serve members.
Yeah.
Kevin Nash is signed with WCW.
And it's just like I thought this was going to be like I thought they were going to put him in a body and. It turned out that, I always thought it was curious, and I'm glad they didn't do it because they did do it because it was his best match ever by far.
Yeah.
And it's the Good Friends, Better Enemies match was Shawn out the door, but yeah, Undertaker goes over. I mean, everyone that was plugged into what was going on behind the scenes knew Undertaker was going to go over. Quite huge. Diesel was very entertaining on his way out the door.
Right.
Because they basically took, Smile. He even made fun of Smiling Diesel and stuff like that. And, he just said what he wanted. He was pretty funny.
Yeah, and it's not like the Undertaker at that time had the capacity on a regular basis to carry a work rate show like Kevin Nash.
He was still very.
He had to be carried. He had to be carried.
He was
so
still
did Nash.
Yeah, he was still very in the gimmick. But this match was not bad.
But that's what I'm saying.
I can't remember. I got it. It's been years since I haven't watched this show in a long time.
This match was surprisingly acceptable. Clearly. Then the other one, and you and I have kind of differed on this in the past on how good it was. The Hollywood Backlot Brawl in 12-15. Roddy Piper defeated Goldust with Marlena. Again,
Marlena was so hot during this period, by the way.
She was. This was before New Jack and any of the other stuff. But, I could have done without the White Bronco Chase parody. I could have done
really?
Without,
you could have done without that?
I'll concede that much to you, Kyle.
Yeah, let me quote. I've seen this before. Thank you, Vince.
But as far as just good stiff shots being exchanged and everything like
that, the brawling was okay.
For a garbage match, I thought it was really good.
But it was so dumb the way it was. Like, they started brawling.
The build up to it.
They do the brawling, and then they do the chase, and then they have another match. I think it's like Austin Vega, and then they're like, wait a minute, they're back in the building, and it was. I didn't like this. Goldust was, by the way, originally this was supposed to be Razor Ramon, but apparently his kids did, he made this big, my kids don't want to see me getting beat up by, a gay guy on TV.
Right.
Come on, Scott.
Wasn't it also that he was suspended then for a drug test as soon as they gave his notice?
Kind of one hand watched the other in this one.
Right.
It was a kind of a person. So he was out. So they brought Piper in to do it, and there were some good promos involved, and I thought Dustin Rhodes did a hell of a job during this period.
You know what they needed to do?
He was getting really. It wasn't as shameless as the artist formerly known as Goldust period. Nothing could ever rival that for shamelessness. But I remember shortly after that famous mouth-to-mouth angle with Ahmed Johnson, which is so funny. When Owen Hart was lecturing, what you're seeing here is very standard CPR.
Right.
Yeah, and it was just funny. Ahmed waking up, and
right.
It was whatever.
The last note that I have on this one
was just, I don't know.
If they're going to do the White Bronco angle, they needed to go all the way with it. All right, if they're doing the whole thing of, they're showing the shots of the cars or whatever, they need to have somebody phone into the thing that's supposed to be an eyewitness thing, but it's the Baba Booey guy. They needed to go all the way with it, Kyle. Recreate everything from that night.
Dennis Rodman was originally supposed to be in this, and WCW signed him away.
Dennis Rodman. What they could have done too is They really should have gone all the way with it. You go to a split screen so it's there, and then in another frame you've got John Starks clinking a bunch of three-point shots off the rim.
There you go. There you go.
So there's all kinds of ways to improve.
It took me a second to realize what the hell you were talking about.
Yes, exactly. June 17th, 94, yo. So
that's a great documentary.
Yeah.
By your favorite channel.
It is. And I look forward, as I mentioned during the previous one, to the sequel, September 13th, 1993. I hope ESPN Films is working on that sometime soon.
Yeah, not interesting enough. Not mainstream enough. Were the Yankees involved in any way?
Yeah, not enough storylines. It was the Cleveland Browns after all that night and not the New York Yankees.
Well,
so
then who cares?
Well... there are more there are more Browns backers clubs nationwide or worldwide than for any other NFL team, Kyle Ross.
I don't give a damn about the bone lady.
All right, well,
slut.
where do you slot 12 before we
dead middle?
All right, dead middle.
12 is dead middle.
All right.
As a matter of fact, if the middle ones, I said this literally could be the one right in the middle.
I differ in the sense that I am going to give this a Jim Abbott 2 thumbs up. So
I kind of give it 1 thumbs up and 1 in the middle.
Okay. The WrestleMania 13 now. Our last one to look at here for the mini episode. The next year, emanating from Chicago, the aforementioned Rosemont.
Yeah, we
Horizon.
never mentioned, by the way, the last one was in the pond at Anaheim.
Yeah.
Again, not not the Pontiac Silverdome.
No, it was not. It was not. It takes a lot for the Rosemont Horizon to be potentially a step up, but it may have been just because Chicago.
Well, just because Chicago's big city, I mean, the class city of the Midwest. Okay, the Cubs, the Bulls. Okay, it ain't a bunch of jabroni teams like Milwaukee. Okay,
thank you, Tom Thibodeau.
Okay,
but
yes.
we come to this one here. It
better than Market Square Arena.
That's true. That's true. This was a one-match show, but not the one that was anticipated to be.
Well, I think from a work perspective,
we knew that
those in the know knew what could deliver.
But in terms of importance, you didn't know how important it was going to be. It was a
and it wasn't even supposed to happen. First of all, of any WrestleMania in history.
Yeah.
So, and the interest was down, and the main event sucked, and the undercard sucked.
Right.
And there was no level of interest. There was the level of interest was at an all-time low going.
Sean lost his smile. We were in a whole streak of WrestleManias where the next year it would be a new babyface in the main event.
Okay.
Yeah.
The issue, the company. Look, here's the big thing. Mm-hmm. Let's start that back because I stammered. Can you just edit that last minute out? By the way, the last thing of me just scrambling, wondering what am I going to say? Yes, I'm gonna. I was distracted. I didn't know what the hell was going on.
Well, we had a minor issue with the system, but it appears to have snapped back.
Okay, good. To me, to start to tell the story here, you have to go back to July of '96.
Yeah.
Bash at the Beach, WCW.
Right.
NWO. For the first time ever, no one is considering the WWF the number one wrestling promotion in this country.
Right.
Well, at least in the national expansion era. The NWO takes off. Shawn was not a great champion. He was behaving very poorly behind the scenes.
And if by behind the scenes you include in the ring and yelling at Vader unprofessionally, then I agree with you.
Well, you need to get in the proper position for his moonsaults, okay? All right. And then...
there could be consequences to not catching people. Yes. Sincerely, Miz.
Yes. Now, Brett came back at the Survivor Series to face a guy who was kind of an afterthought at WrestleMania 12 and had transformed himself into quite the big deal, Mr. Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
They have a wonderful match, 4 3/4 stars. I think it's the best match in the history of the Survivor Series. And from there, the build is to do the Brett Shawn rematch. You know, we talked about how they didn't do the Hogan Warrior rematch. The plan here was to do Brett and Shawn. And I learned from the Brett Shawn DVD that it was never scheduled to be the world title match. It was always Vince had panicked again and went with the big guys. You've referenced this.
Footnote,
okay,
yeah.
I didn't know that. I always assumed that, when Shawn lost. I don't know how they were going to do it. Maybe they were wrong or lying. I don't know. But the bottom line is this, okay? Shawn loses the belt to Sid when he probably should have lost to Vader a couple months early. He wins it back at the Alamo Dome in the Rumble, loses his smile, basically the company gets rightfully pissed at him. You know, when we say lose his smile, most people know that we're referencing it. People,
right.
You know, a lot of people accuse him of exaggerating a knee injury, so he did not have to drop the title to Bret Hart. He winds up not dropping the title to anybody. He just forfeits it in the ring. You know, and it winds up at the end of the day on Sid. And the plan was, because that WrestleMania was called Heat, that it was going to be Bret and Shawn, you know, with this big rematch. It was going to be, and it doesn't come to fruition. Mm-hmm. They write Shawn out of the program. Bret has nothing to do, so they kind of sort of resuscitate the Steve Austin program. And Bret made it seem like it was kind of like in the DVD. He seemed real bitter that it was kind of like a dead and foregone issue. I didn't view it that way. I remember
Austin cheated to win the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, and that was Austin's kind of main pro. Like, Austin the whole time after that was always campaigning for another shot at Bret Hart. So I didn't think it was as dead an issue as Bret made it out to be. And it obviously, the moral of the story of this whole soliloquy is it winds up working out for the better. Now, the WrestleMania 13, along with is one of the hardest WrestleManias to rate for me. I still give it below average designation because I think you have to, because the level of interest was so low, and every match but one is bad.
That's true.
But we do have the greatest match in the history of the company, and I would argue maybe the greatest match in the history of the business. With Bret and Steve Austin, this is the when you trace things back, the identifiable point where Steve Austin's career truly took off. Because, yeah, okay, you can talk about the Austin 316 promo, King of the Ring, previous year. He wasn't even working He wasn't even working the main show at SummerSlam.
Right.
So this is where he turned. You know, they do the impossible double turn. And I'll say this about this match: its legacy. In a year that saw the first Hell in a Cell, Shawn Undertaker, the Eddie Ray match, WCW Halloween Havoc, which is a lot of people, including myself, consider to be the best WCW match of the 90s. This was considered the match of the year at the end of 97. Mm-hmm. That was before. You know, Austin's career was kind of still a little, okay, he's not 100%. You know, they're going to make him into the guy. Hopefully that works. It's only after that, then, that adds to it. It's like I said, this is the traceable point where Steve Austin's career takes off. So to me, that's such a mark in this match's favor that even before you knew that Steve Austin would become the biggest draw in the history of the company, this was considered the match of the year.
It was.
And it is, I referenced, we kind of talked about 3 of the 4-star matches, 3 of the 4 5-star matches in WrestleMania history. This would be the tops of all time. This is number 1, and is there has not been a 5-star match at WrestleMania since this time.
Right, because when you looked at him coming out of WrestleMania,
he was such a star.
Yes, I mean, a huge star. For the first time, it was okay to cheer for him now that they'd executed the double turn. But this was the last thing that he had needed to get to this level. A few things came before.
They needed to make it official.
King of the Ring the year before, and the Austin 316 chants and signs that started right thereafter. The whole thing, as you said, the match at Survivor Series with Bret Hart. It was
that was his best match ever.
Yeah,
that was his best match ever.
It was a sequential thing in that instance, even going back to, I believe, in that match, even though it had been months since he left Ted DiBiase. DiBiase had left the promotion. He reverted during that match to using the $1 Million Dream, which he would also use subsequently, interestingly enough, at WrestleMania 17 in the heel turn match against The Rock.
Yes.
Which was very interesting. But, this was like the last piece of the puzzle that Austin needed to become a megastar. He had the other things that were setting it up over the course of the previous year. This match with the explosive double turn, he never tapped out, even though it was a submission match. He passed out in the sharpshooter, and Ken Shamrock was the third man in the ring.
That's always kind of the forgotten part of this match, that Ken Shamrock was brought in.
Well, I asked him about it when he was on the show in the fall. We spent some time talking about this, and it was an interesting thing. It was the wedge for Ken Shamrock storyline wise
to get into
the there. He'd been a cage fighter in UFC previously. Went on to, I thought, a really pretty good run.
So did I.
In the company. Here's the thing too. I told you last year, I believe on my birthday, I finally got around to watching Canadian Stampede for the first time. Just a side note, I couldn't believe it didn't seem like, especially against Pillman or whatever, it didn't seem like Shamrock got nearly as much offense as you would think badass MMA fighter would get.
Well, he's new, he's green, he doesn't know what he's doing. I love, by the way, when him and Pillman are fighting, that Pillman starts tapping his arm out on the ground. That makes me laugh.
Yeah,
I love Brian Pillman. Pillman's got this look on his face, like, look what I'm doing. Pillman, yeah.
But it was like, I couldn't.
That wasn't his crowd. That wasn't his night.
It sort of took me out of it a little bit because a badass like Ken Shamrock in real life doesn't get bitched out the way that he did in that match.
Honestly, though, that was Steve Austin and just four throwaway baby faces that night. But look, they did such a great job building to this that makes me say that it's so amazing that this wasn't even on the books originally.
Yeah. Fell ass backwards into it.
Yes. And look, I could argue that going into the show, they were at their low point, getting their tail kicked by WCW.
Yeah.
The ratings say that was even later in the year, kind of when Brett was leaving, that was when the gap was the widest.
Right.
I've always felt personally that the end of 96 through the beginning of 97 was when the gap was truly at its biggest.
Yep.
There was no one really that would argue that WCW wasn't the better promotion. Mick Foley said on a lot of interviews, it's like, look, it took us till, April 98 to overtake in the ratings, but I always felt we were the better show for a while before that, and he's absolutely correct.
Yes.
I thought it was getting pretty even in the summer.
Yes. And they got better. This was the end of their creative nadir.
Yeah. I mean, 96, actually, to be honest with you, I could argue that the end of 96, when the NWO was just red hot and new and really going, that was probably when WCW was at its, the gap was biggest. But it was still big here anyway, regardless.
And I know you disagree with me, but I feel the NWO is getting stale in the summer and the fall of 97. I know you'll throw metrics at me and say that the numbers don't back that up, but
no, I would agree.
I was looking at it like creatively anyways. I was looking at it like, okay, enough already.
Well, they should have been killed dead at Starrcade 97, and they should have done the split, the Wolfpack Hollywood thing right after that. That was mishandled.
I still thought that it was just way too long of a drag out to Sting Hogan.
Oh, I didn't. I thought that was well done, and it's all their fault why that didn't work. Okay, it's not because they waited. It's not because they waited why that didn't work. It's because Hulk Hogan is a selfish prick. Okay,
true.
With a hideous orange tan, and he needed to shave his head years ago.
I agree with all that, but and
what
also,
do you got to say about that?
I think he also needs to stop getting caught by paparazzi cameras giving reach-arounds to his daughter. I think that would be helpful also if he would.
Excuse me. Okay. Yes.
Haven't you seen those?
No.
They're kind of hot, actually. I'm not going to lie.
Jesus. Oh God.
I just want to
back
see
to WrestleMania 13.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
They did a good job. I'm Vince McMahon, who is much maligned on play-by-play. This was, by the way, the only WrestleMania where it was Vince, JR, and the King. I loved them together, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought Vince as the storyline play-by-play guy mixed in with JR as the knowledge play-by was a
right.
I thought they worked well because
this was post-heel JR. The previous fall, JR had been a little bit of a heel.
Yeah, Vince had kind of taken the muzzle off JR, so to speak, and let him kind of do his spiel. He let him work in all the football references and and all the the slobber knockers and the and whatever.
By God, shades of when he was playing Pop Warner there as a king.
Yeah. And they did such. I remember. They talked about it like Vince. I don't know why they're cheering this, Austin, but they sure do. They did such a great job on commentary of setting this whole thing up.
It was a slow burn. It was beautiful.
It really was, and you have to talk about the Raw the week before when Brett went off with that profanity-laden tirade, which was so incredible.
The groundwork was laid excellently.
Yes, it was so perfect that it pretty much washes away all the crap. Like I would never recommend it's interesting. I would never recommend watching this WrestleMania. now Brett Sean's on there. I would just recommend watching Brett Austin.
Yeah.
Just if you have it on a comp or something like on just watch that.
Exactly.
Because the rest of this show is hideous. I mean, there are people who rate this as one of the worst WrestleManias ever.
I can understand that.
I can't go that far because how do you say something's one of the worst if it's got the best match ever?
You said 2 5-stars at WrestleMania 10 carried it to a place in the Pantheon.
Yeah,
so.
well, that carried it. That also had, from a storyline perspective, I think put things in its right place. This had nothing else right except the most perfect match ever. Right. And that carries it. It's not the worst ever. It would be on the upper tier of the bottom 10.
The throwaways here on this card actually start with the ostensible main event and what was the build main event going into this thing here. The Undertaker defeating the champion Psycho Sid in a no disqualification match for the WWF Championship in 21-19.
Bad match.
Why you let those two guys work for 21-19, I'll never know.
Yeah.
Who's supposed to carry who here?
Yeah. The only cool thing here is that after the world title was bouncing around a lot. You had the Final Four. You had Sid beating Brett on a Raw. You had a lot of Undertaker gave some stability to that title when it needed it. He holds it till SummerSlam.
And this match did have star power in that. You were conditioned to look at both of these.
It's funny.
It's a horrible.
It's
worker.
funny that It's funny that this was the second time Sid closed WrestleMania, and I could make an argument that they were the 2 worst closers.
It might very well have been, but that's. Did Sid deserve to be a star? No, but did the masses?
He was kind of in that Luger Bigelow level too. Should have been better.
Absolutely. But in what's even more apparent in his case,
labeled as can't miss, and he missed.
Yeah, but it's less of a mystery in his case why he didn't do more because he's not that good.
Yes.
And he also,
I can say the same about Luger.
Oh, Luger's a lot better than him.
Yeah,
sure. Luger's way better, sure. and Luger never quit playing to play softball or quit wrestling to play softball as he did on many different occasions.
Yeah, this was pretty much it for Sid, by the way, in WWE.
Yeah,
he hung around for a little bit, and it was
yeah. We barely knew you. The rest of the card here, just blowing through it. On the free for all, Billy Gunn defeated Flash Funky Flash, as New Jack, I think, once called him in a shoot interview in 705. Too Cold Scorpio, criminally underused in the WWF at the time.
This is a dark match, correct?
It was the free-for-all.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, I missed that. All right.
The 4-way tag team match to determine the #1 contenders for the WWF Tag Team Championship. The Headbangers, Mosh and Thrasher, defeated the New Blackjacks, Wyndham and Bradshaw. The Godwins.
Foley's kid did not want their figures. Their action figures.
The Godwins, Henry and Phineas, with Hillbilly Jim and Doug Furness and Phil LaFon. R.I.P. Doug Furness, by the way. Mm-hmm. Great workers. Hands down in this match, if we were going to look at who should have gotten it based on work rate, it would have been Furness and LaFon.
They were still baby faces here, I think.
They were.
They had some good matches with Owen and Bulldog, who were the tag champs before this.
Right.
Just not over as a baby.
Barry Windham,
team.
an all-time Pantheon worker, but in a horrible tag team.
The new
here.
Blackjacks was one of the stupidest ideas.
Blackjack, Bradshaw was way too. Sorry, JBL, but you were way too green at the time to be credible. And yeah,
I kind of thought the Headbangers deserved to go over. I remember at the time. I don't know why.
I would have preferred Furness and LaFon. I was starting to become a full-fledged smart at the time.
Yeah, well, they had already challenged them and kind of not been successful,
That's true.
So you knew they weren't going over.
That's true. Intercontinental title match. One of the ones that we will make fun of forever and a day. Rocky Maivia, the champion, defeated the
Blue
Sultan.
Chipper.
Yes. He defeated the Sultan with Bob Backlund and the Iron Sheik in 9:45.
Okay, if you think Rocky sucks, okay, I raise you the Sultan. This match is obviously semi-infamous for being the debut of Rocky Sucks.
Yeah.
And Die Rocky Die was the famous sign that he would reference here. This is the nadir of the Intercontinental title.
Right.
Without question. They did some sort of half-hearted. Rocky was bad. There's no doubt he was just bad at this point, and he was so bad that they jobbed him to Owen Hart shortly after this for the Intercontinental title and took him off TV, and then the rest is history.
When you're the champ in a match, and you come backstage after the match, and Bob Backlund says to you, "Wow, that's the wrong kind of heat, son, for a champion." That's pretty bad, man. That's pretty bad.
And they put all the focus here on the old timers, because you had Backlund and Sheik. Yeah, that they were trying desperation.
That was the legacy that they were going to get.
And Rocky Johnson saves Rocky, and Rocky Johnson. Look, to me, I mean, well, now it's clear. I mean, his kind of, first line on Wikipedia is the father of The Rock, okay?
Right.
I mean, he was a former tag team, but he wasn't like a major star, I thought.
Nowhere near Backlund and the Sheik, no question about it. Hunter Hearst Helmsley, he'd come a long way since jobbing to the Warrior in a squash the previous year. Triple H with China defeated Goldust.
Although he still
with
sucked
Marlena.
at this period.
Yeah, 14-28. Another instance of giving way too much time to a match that didn't deserve it.
These were like two former Intercontinental champions. Goldust was a terrible babyface in 1997.
Yeah, no way capable of carrying Triple H.
And Triple H, though, I'll say this, he goes over. He began to get heat because of China here.
Right.
He began to get heat because of China.
Yeah, he certainly did. Tag team title match.
It'd be amazing. A year later, all of a sudden, finally, things would start to click.
Yes, they would.
No pun intended.
Exactly. Owen Hart and the British Bulldog, the tag team champions, fought Mankind and Vader with Paul Bearer to a double countout in 1608. Just a real head-scratching thing here that I understand. I believe that Mick Foley, I think he was quoted in one of his books as saying that he had pitched it to Vince about somehow acknowledging the backstory with Vader, and Vince just didn't want to hear it because it didn't happen there. I mean, how you put those two guys together and don't even acknowledge, etc. number 9 or whatever, I don't understand it.
Well, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. More to me, the story of this is always that Vader and Mankind were supposed to get the titles. Bret Hart pulled creative control because they were reforming they would obviously reform the Hart Foundation very shortly after this, and he wanted Owen and Davey still strong because the thing was they were going to lose, and the original plan was Owen and Davey to split up. Davey was going to go face. Bret, kind of when all things was like, no, we're not doing that. I want a big heel group.
I blow hot and cold on Mick Foley's shtick, but I gotta admit, I've just gained new respect from that. He walked out in support of Bret Hart 6 months later after something like that. That's amazing.
Well, it didn't hurt his career that much.
No, it didn't. But I still am amazed by that. And then the only other one we haven't talked about thus far, the 6-man tag team Chicago Street Fight. The Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, and Ahmed Johnson.
Clearly the second best match on the show.
Crush Farouk and Savio Vega with Wolfie D, JC Ice, D'Lo Brown, and Clarence Mason. The whole thing, too, this was fatally crippled by the whole thing of why in God's name they ever had Ahmed Johnson join the Nation and then feud with them again. I mean, Farouk put him out of friggin' wrestling, and he comes back and joins them.
Here's the thing. I can comment on that in a second.
Yeah.
I thought for a visual, when Ahmed Johnson cut the Road Warriors step out first, and then Ahmed comes out next, and he's got the Road Warrior spikes on. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. I think that's cool. This is actually a pretty cool match. This was a hot feud. Now, it's interesting. Ahmed, they teased he had gang roots. He was becoming lazy during this period. Right. He had hit his peak a year previous. They turned him heel. Now, you know why they turned him back babyface, don't you?
I don't think so.
Okay, well, when they turned him heel, Ahmed was always a scary-looking dude, man. Mm-hmm. They were afraid at the period, and it kind of was that Ahmed was usurping Farouk's heat as the leader of the group.
Okay.
So they wanted to put in a far less offensive and what they felt far more minimal heat-drawing guy to take Ahmed's spot. How interesting that would be Rocky Maivia, who would, of course, take way more of Farouk's heat away than Ahmed ever could have, and winds up booting Farouk out of the group and becoming the leader, and, of course, becomes one of the greatest stars of this industry.
I am flashing back to my WOUB days in Athens, and now you know the rest of the story. Thank you, Kyle.
That is what I believe. They put Ahmed in, and the dynamic wasn't working because people kind of viewed him and Farouk as equals. It just wasn't working. So they're like, well, Rocky Maivia, we still believe in him. God, did he suck? We'll just stick him in the Nation. God knows, no one will view him as equals to Farouk after that disastrous run, and the rest, as they say,
why
history.
They would have put Ahmed in there in the first place that made no sense. It was completely nonsensical storyline.
Well, I don't know. They did tease it. I mean, I remember when it happened, I was not shocked. I saw it coming a million miles away.
That just seemed like a Russo thing. Swerve for the sake of swerve. The guy who put the guy out.
Yeah, and it's like, why? Like, really, after you've said all these, like, why would you? They didn't really do a good job of explaining it. And the funny thing is, I think like Ahmed got injured anyway right after he did it. So but yeah, it was, you know, and then by after that, when they, you know, when you turn him back babyface and do the same thing, the heat's gone, and
it was all gone. And I'll tell you what, I mean, Ahmed's trajectory before that first injury, when he was tag teaming with Shawn as the People's Posse, when he was the Intercontinental Champion, you know,
you thought this guy was going to be one of the great stars. I remember, I was like the last person to give up on Ahmed Johnson. Like, I remember, like, I would always like call that old plain dealer hotline. You remember that thing?
Black Jack Brown?
Yeah, and I was like, when's Ahmed Johnson coming back from injury? Got it. They could really use Ahmed right now. And it just, he never did.
You were all hyped for him when he won the letter T from Booker T. Years later.
You're going down. By the way, Marcellus Wiley, I believe, is Ahmed Johnson's twin.
Marcellus Wiley is somebody that I loathe.
He's why? Because he works for ESPN?
Well, also because he's a backstabber, because of this is a guy who made disparaging comments about Rob Johnson when in support of Doug Flutie. There, he was insubordinate towards his starting quarterback, and I didn't appreciate that. He was campaigning for this fraudulent Doug Flutie.
Oh, now get out of
it! One of my least favorite players ever, the midget mullet.
Oh, get out of here.
In favor of Rob Johnson, who was completely, fatally undermined by that cabal in Buffalo that Marcellus Wiley was a proud part of. I absolutely believe that.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
I absolutely
believe
that.
Rob Johnson stinks.
Rob Johnson, a man who could scramble barefoot and throw a touchdown pass, and did on occasion, by the way. Rob Johnson, a fine...
What's he doing now? Running around the backyard, scrambling barefoot?
One of the least utilized... fine quarterbacks of this past generation. We may never know, had he not been fatally backstabbed and compromised by Doug Flutie in Buffalo, what he would have gone on to do. We may never know.
Give me Flutie Flakes, okay? Give me Flutie Flakes. Remember when Jimmy Johnson stomped on that box of Flutie Flakes?
That was
and Flutie, it was, even I was going, whoa, Doug, you took it the wrong way. He's like, he just stomped on autistic children everywhere. It's like, whoa, gee. Okay, I guess. Okay, moving on to the AFC South.
To which a former colleague of ours, Eric Stranko, would probably reply, if only if that were literally true.
Oh, no, come on. All I can say is, Rob Johnson could go to hell.
Oh, Doug Flutie can stick it, brother.
Yes, I like it.
All right, well, we're feeling punchy here at this point, but WrestleMania 13, so how do you slot it ultimately?
In the bottom 10. But barely. It's right below the average group.
All right. So it gets carried like the Samsonite it is, up from being the dregs because of the Bret Austin
it's kind of in the middle. It's kind of the lower,
All right. Well, this is Chapter 6 here of this gone by, the middle part of the trilogy here that we have tackled here today. Parts 4, 5, and 6 in this marathon taping. 4, 5, and 6 almost to the letter, as long as 1, 2, and 3 were a combined 4.5 hours. Truly, truly unbelievable.
Yes.
Only we can bring it this way, but the Kyle Ross 9-part history of WrestleMania anthology.
By the way, we talked about at the beginning how whoever told the Ultimate Warrior not to run to the ring did a great job because he didn't sure he got blown up. I'm blown up now.
I am too.
I'm blown up.
All I can say is...
we got to go home, brother. It's time to go home.
Shades of that night in Miami. I'm going to need to do like Kellen Winslow and get some IVs and some bananas stat. We'll wrap it on that note. This has been Part 6 of Kyle Ross's 9-part history of WrestleMania anthology. Rick Morris and Kyle Ross breaking it down for ya.